Today I will discuss some important questions regarding taxation. Priorly, I have discussed certain points of budget 2025, 26 and 26, 27. Two and three questions which may be asked in preliminary 2026. The first question is related to tax buoyancy, tax elasticity. Theoretical aspect is there. How you measure the tax buoyancy? If our tax base, generally we define the tax base our national income, say increase by 10%, how much there will be the change in our tax revenue? This ratio generally we define the tax buoyancy. If our tax revenue increase more than change in tax base, that kinds of tax is known as buoyant tax. And if the tax revenue increase less than change in tax base, the tax is known as non-buoyant tax. In previous year, multiple years, this questions has been asked by making the questions applied or application based question. Now you can see these questions recently or since 1991 onward, when Government of India introduced different kinds of tax reforms. Priorly our direct tax was buoyant, but indirect tax was buoyant. Recently, our old tax structure becoming more and more buoyant. It means if our tax base will increase 10%, then the tax revenue collections will increase more than 10% of our GDP. One point is clear. Second is tax elasticity. Tax elasticity means change in tax revenue due to change in tax rate. If our tax revenue increase more or decrease more, increase or decrease, or you can say change more, then changing in tax rate, that kinds of tax is known as elastic tax. And if the tax revenue increase less or decrease less than changing in tax rate, that kinds of tax is known as inelastic tax. If you go through the constitution, you will see under article 275, all tax divided into two, union tax and state government tax. Union government list tax, namely income tax, corporation tax, central excise duty, custom duty, etc., are more elastic in nature, whereas the state government tax like entertainment tax, state excise duty, etc., are less elastic tax. The third point, if you go through the budget 2026-27, you will see if we or Government of India receive 1 rupees, out of this 1 rupees, how much come to us from taxation? And sometime in preliminary they ask descending order of tax revenue contribution in our total receipts or total 1 rupees receipts. Then you will see, I will speak here for the financial year 2026-27 as the budget estimate given by the government. Our income tax will contribute 21 paisa in 1 rupees receipts. Corporation tax 18 paisa in 1 rupees receipts. GST 15 paisa. Now you are clear. Income tax largest 21% in 100 paisa. Second largest is corporation tax 18 paisa in 100 paisa. Third is GST 15 paisa in 100 paisa. And fourth and fifth are respectively union excise tax or duty and custom duty. These are 6 and 4%. And my last point, which is very important, tax to GDP ratio and our nature of taxes. If we go through the budget statistics given by 2026-27 budget estimates, In 2017-18, our tax to GDP ratio was 11.2%. It increased and reached up to 11.5% during 2023-24. But later on it began to fall, and it was revised estimate in the budget 2025-26 for 11.4%. Again, budget estimate given for the year 2026-27, 11.2%. And if we give you the nature of tax, they are progressive or regressive. First, you have to understand the meaning of progressive tax. Which tax would you like to call progressive tax, and which tax would you like to call regressive tax? If the tax burden is more on poor section, then kinds of tax is known as regressive. As you know, all indirect tax are regressive in nature, whereas personal income tax, corporation tax, capital gain tax, they are progressive in nature. And if you see in total tax revenue, the share of direct taxes are increasing since 2004-5 onward, whereas the share of indirect taxes are reducing. It means since 2004-5 onward, our tax nature is becoming progressive in nature. If you give certain statistics, in 2017-18, out of 11.2% of tax GDP, 5.9% were contributed by the direct taxes, 5.4% by indirect taxes. But in the year 2020-21, the share of direct taxes suddenly decreased up to 4.8%, whereas indirect tax was 5.4% and direct tax was, as I priorly told you, 4.8%. But since 2020-21 onward, the share of direct tax in total tax revenue collection increased consistently, as it was 6.5% during 2023-24 and reached up to 6.8% during 2025-26 and budget estimate 2026-27, so 6.9%. Rest of the amount is indirect taxes. It means now our tax structure is more progressive in nature, which will equally divide the national income among the society, means creating less burden of tax on weaker sections and creating more burden of tax on richer section. Poor section less, richer section is more. Students, I discussed these 3 or 4 points. Out of this, definitely you will get, as my prediction, 1 or 2 questions from this unit. Thank you. I will discuss further in coming lecture the economic survey.